Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is mindset, and we're actually going to be discussing how to improve sleep quality. So this is something that's come up with a couple of listeners, and I figured it's probably long overdue to have a podcast just simply on sleep quality. I believe I've mentioned sleeping kind of things in past podcasts, but I don't think we had a separate one just for it. So we're going to go through that and do that now. We're going to talk about a bunch of different topics related to sleep, and in general, some of these things are going to seem really corny or seem like they're not that important. However, if you put some application to them, if you put them into practice, you might find that they are more helpful than you think. And out of everything that we state in this podcast, maybe not all of it will apply well to you. However, there's definitely going to be some tidbits that you can put into use. So everybody's sleeping issues come from kind of different sources. So therefore, different treatments or different areas of concern are going to have differing impacts on people. So the first thing I have here is to think of supplements and teas. So as part of your evening routine, something you can do is to take a sleep aid as you get closer to bedtime. So I've experimented with melatonin and with different types of teas, like hot teas you can drink. There's one called Sleepy Time Tea, and there are various types of, there are prescription sleep aids, but typically prescription sleep aids are going to work effectively right away. Well, they're going to have their best chance to work right away. And then your body will get kind of used to the chemical effect, and they'll work less often. I've actually found that melatonin and sleepy time tea tend to have, or like an equivalent of sleepy time tea. I'm sure other companies produce something similar. But these things seem to have a little bit maybe of a lower level of effect. However, they tend to be effective for the long term. And I've also found that using something like melatonin, where maybe on nights you already feel tired, you'd skip it. On nights where you think you're going to fall asleep fine, you're not really having any major issues, maybe just take half a dose. Maybe on nights where you're kind of like wired, maybe you had too much caffeine throughout the day or a lot of stress throughout the day, and maybe you're in a different place, different environment, maybe anxiety is really high. Just maybe there's something about that night that you can tell is going to make it hard to fall asleep. You can take a full dose. So, for example, the melatonin tablets I have are 10 milligram. So I'll skip them on nights I'm already tired and falling asleep. If nights that I can tell like I'm, probably going to stay up a little bit later than I want, but I do feel sleepy, I'll take 5 milligrams. On nights when I know I definitely need something to help me kind of fall asleep on time, I'll take 10 milligrams. So this is something that I've experimented with, just trying to use mental discipline to fall asleep on time, and I consider myself a relatively disciplined person mentally. If you've been listening to this podcast for a decent amount of time, you've heard me say all the crazy stories of things I've tried, where I drank a gallon of milk every day for 2 years, never missed a single day. I did 250 push-ups and 250 sit-ups every single day for a year. I missed 10 days within the year, so that kind of stinks. I've exercised for 19 years, and I've never missed more than 7 consecutive days, and I've only done that twice. So I'm pretty consistent with things. I've done 50-pound weight cut diets in 10 weeks or less 3 times in my life. So there's some of the things. So I am a relatively mentally disciplined person when I want to be. And I found that I could get myself into bed and I could get myself out of bed consistently at the exact same time when I wanted to. But the amount of sleep and the quality of sleep I got was usually horrendous and or off and on, kind of hit or miss. When using melatonin, I do feel like it kind of knocks me out, so to speak, early. And then if I maintain healthy habits throughout the night, we're going to talk about that later on here in the podcast. But for example, I don't look at my phone in the middle of the night. So if I get up to go pee, I don't look at my phone. I actually have a dimmer switch in my bathroom. So I installed that in my bathroom to where I can keep the light very, very low. So when I wake up, I kind of go to the bathroom, but I don't have a big bright fluorescent light or, a big light source kind of waking me up It's really dim. I walk back into my bedroom, and I lay back in the bed. Don't look at your phone. You just lay there, and pretty quickly you'll fall back asleep. So there are some sleep hygiene type things, like good sleep behaviors that help a lot. So melatonin is something that I do believe actually works well. If you've never tried it before, it might be worth a shot. If you tried it and for some reason you didn't get any results, we still have a lot of other stuff we're going to cover in this podcast that will hopefully help. And Sleepy Time Tea is something that has, I don't know if it has melatonin in it or not, but it has a bunch of other type of like sleep aids and like smells and aromas and things that help you fall asleep more. So I'm actually a big fat dork when it comes to this stuff. I actually have different body wash kind of like soap that I use. I have one for the morning that's like a citrus, and one for the evening that's lavender. So if I take a shower in the morning, I do the citrus one. If I take a shower at night, I do the lavender one, because lavender is supposed to help you kind of fall asleep. It's a better smell for sleeping. Citrus is supposed to be bright and wake you up. So yes, I am ridiculous when it comes to this, but what I found for me, and I've talked about this in past podcasts, is that I have a lot of things that go against sleep quality. So I had surgery when I was younger. Surgery led to other issues, which led to sleeping issues and yada, yada, yada. But I've never had really good sleep. So for me, if I can find, hell, I don't really give a shit. Like if differing shampoos makes a difference, I'll do it. I don't care. So in the span of using up 2 body washes, whether I bought the same kind and used it twice in a row, or I bought a morning one and a nighttime one, they're both going to last the same distance, like same length of time. So I'll just buy 2 at one time, use them at whatever rate I use them up at. But heck, I don't know. I think it whether it helps or not, I don't care. I feel that it helps, and that's good enough for me. So melatonin and sleepy time tea are things that you can use. And like I said, don't use them every night if you don't think you need them. So if you're already tired, skip that stuff and just go to bed. So the other things that can help is part of the evening routine can be taking melatonin and sleepy time tea, but also there's other things in a nighttime routine that can help. So for example, avoiding a heavy meal close to the time you would go to bed does help you fall asleep faster. So I tend to, and what I kind of recommend to my clients, is to kind of taper off their volumes of food and calories and whatnot later into the evening. So for us to be in our healthiest kind of physical shape, we want our food intake to match our energy levels. So if I'm very active throughout the day, I want to eat most of my calories during the day. And if I'm less active at night, I don't want to be eating a bunch of food. I don't want to be eating a dinner and then all of a sudden a nighttime snack, and I'm getting like half my calories of the day all right before I go to bed. That's not healthy for fat control, body fat control. It's not healthy for blood work, and it's not going to be healthy for sleep. So you don't want to have a big pounded huge meal in your belly right before you go to bed. It often does not lead to good sleep quality. So you might fall asleep fast, but maybe you won't stay asleep. Or you might sleep well, but your body was up all night kind of internally doing a whole bunch of processing and odds and ends, and maybe it wasn't super restful for the body. So it's recommended, and I found that it has been true for me, is to have smaller meal before I go to bed and have it about 1 or 2 hours before I go to bed. So that has helped me, and it has helped clients in the past. And when I'm trying to grow, when I'm trying to build size, I do drink milk throughout the night, so you don't have to do milk. But drinking calories are something, if you naturally wake up to go to the bathroom, just swigging on something with extra calories and then roll back into bed and fall asleep, that does help. So if you're afraid to lessen the volume of your meal before you go to bed, there's a couple things real quick. Number one is you can lessen the volume without having to lessen the calories. So for example, if you eat steak, like say 6 ounces of steak before you go to bed, that can actually be quite a bit of calories compared to 6 ounces of chicken. So you can also switch to a meal of fats rather than carbs. So having like for example, one of my nighttime meals is steak and eggs. So the eggs and the steak both have fats in them, and the steak and the eggs both have proteins. And that's something that you don't need to have a big helping, large amount for. You can actually get a significant amount of calories from a lower volume of food compared to trying to eat like chicken and white rice for the same amount of calories. You might end up having like 2 or 3 times the volume of the food that you would have in the steak and eggs. So if you're trying to grow, I'm not saying that you have to eat less calories before you go to bed. You just want to eat a lower volume of food. So that way it's not sitting in your stomach and kind of causing any digestive issues. So that is helpful. Another thing is to stop electronics before you go to bed. I think we all have heard this, but very rarely do we actually apply it. So, for example, is you can set the alarm on your phone and then maybe go take a shower, brush your teeth, kind of prep for the next day, maybe food wise or clothing wise. You can read a book until you get sleepy. And we're going to talk about later on in the podcast about like a daily happiness routine. So, which is like a mental kind of process you can go through to help yourself kind of sum up the day and create a good positive mindset for that next day. But that's something you can do. So you want to do something off of your phone, away from your phone. So reading a book or doing a mental activity, something like that, until you fall asleep. So sometimes I will play a podcast from somebody who, one of the kind of podcasts I follow, I might play that and I'll have it on a timer for say 20 minutes. So I will kind of get on my phone, I'll set the timer up, set the podcast, hit play, and then push my phone away from me. So it goes on the counter next to me or like actually the counter across the room. And that'll help me kind of like get some kind of sound. Maybe it gives me something to think of. So if I don't want to have my own thoughts going on, so maybe there's something I'm stressed about from the day or worried about the next day, listening to a podcast is sometimes a good distraction. But it's something to where you're not staring at the screen of your phone. So if you're watching, YouTube videos or Netflix or crap like that, you're going to stay up way later than you really should. So try to get away from electronics. And the further, like the earlier in the evening you can get away from electronics, the bigger effect it has. So like I said, if you can set your phone alarm and then still have like the time it would take to shower, brush your teeth, prep for the next day, maybe read a book for 10-15 minutes, all of a sudden you haven't been on your phone for an hour, that can actually help you fall asleep even faster. So that's something that's definitely helpful. You also want to avoid performing high activity or high active or highly stimulating activities before you would go to bed. So I remember I was talking with a client once and she was telling me how her dogs were messing with her sleep because her dogs needed to go out at midnight and her dogs needed to go out again at 5 a.m. That was absolutely arbitrary. It was just whenever the dogs felt like doing it, and she didn't realize that she was in charge of the dogs. So she could just take the dogs out at 11. She could take the dogs out at 6 a.m. She didn't have to wake up. So she would actually get up at 5 a.m., take her dogs out, and then try to lay back down for an hour. That's stupid. Unless there's some kind of medical condition, which I know for a fact with that person there wasn't. Why in the hell would you get up in the middle of your night's sleep to let dogs out? That's so ridiculous. Like the dogs, you're in charge of them. You set the routine, not them. Okay? You're the adult. So you're the one in charge. But that's something where sometimes people will perform a physical activity or a highly stimulating activity and then try to go to bed, and it's ridiculous. So if you try to take your dogs outside, there's a whole bunch of ordeal of all that. And then you want to come in and just kind of plop in bed and fall asleep. Our body doesn't often turn off that fast. So you have to give your body time to kind of like unwind and charge down. So that's something to think of. Also, our sleeping environment matters immensely. So temperature, for example, is a big kind of factor with sleep quality. So in general, the recommendation for sleep temperature is that the room you're in be slightly on the chilled side. So there would be kind of hot, there's warm, there's kind of good temperature, comfortable temperature, but then there's slightly cold. So overwhelmingly, most sleep books and kind of sleep information you'll find is going to recommend that you be closer to the kind of chilled temperature. Definitely not hot. We all know that you can't sleep in a hot room. It's miserable. Excuse me. So warm still doesn't work because you might wake up like sweating and dry mouth and kind of just not feeling good. Average sounds like it would be good, but actually a little bit chilled is actually better. And part of the reason why is because while you're sleeping, your skin is actually always awake, quote unquote, in the sense that it's always sensitive. And this was something that we needed earlier back in the day, whenever human beings were on the planet and we didn't have comfy houses with comforters and beds. It would probably be helpful for us to know if a bug or a snake or some creature was crawling on us and ready to eat us. So our skin needed to be sensitive while we were still sleeping. So it still is that way today. So if you sleep in a room that's slightly chilled, you will then be more likely to have a blanket with you, or a comforter or a sheet or something like that. And if you sleep with a covering over top of you, that desensitizes the skin and it actually helps you sleep better. So sometimes your skin can be sensitive enough to where just changing air currents in the room can actually keep your body more alert than being in a full restful sleep. So having it a little bit chilled helps because, again, it kind of keeps the body temperature regulated better and it allows you to use something as a covering, which helps you desensitize the skin. Also, lighting is something that we want to keep very low so we can still see light through our eyelids, and actually your skin can actually pick up on light rays. There's a whole bunch of weird sciencey stuff behind it, but in general you want to keep lighting as low as possible in the room you're in, and that would be any kind of light, even if it's a blue light from some charging thing you have, or like if it's a night light, something like that. You want to try to eliminate all light in the room. That'll actually help you get into a deeper sleep. And then, like I said, is even going as far as inserting or installing a dimmer switch on your bathroom light is actually a really good idea. It's actually really cheap and really easy to do. But that helps you, like when you wake up in the middle of the night, if you go to the bathroom, you don't crank on a huge bright light, right, like so you can go to the bathroom, then have to turn it off and try to fall back asleep again. So if you can do a dimmer switch, that actually helps with the process of the bathroom activity, not fully arousing you and waking you back up again. So sound is also important. Some people need complete silence to sleep, so using earplugs is a great idea. Some people, oh, by the way, you can use eye covering, like an eye mask, to cover out light as well, so that's another idea. If you don't like the idea of like total silence, you can use what's called ambient noise. So some people will just turn on like a fan sound on their phone, and that can sometimes just give you some kind of low level, boring noise that you can shut your brain off to. So you don't want things that have wild or loud noises in them. So I've actually looked up on YouTube before, and there was like things that were like supposed to be like nature sounds, and there was some caw-cawing bird like every 35-40 seconds, which was stupid. So it was enough of a noise that would actually like alert you, because like out of nowhere you hear caw, and you're like, what the hell? So that was a horrible idea by whoever created that. So it's better to have a noise that doesn't have variance to it, just a deadpan, straight level noise, such as a fan. That's a much better source than like waterfalls, which are just going to make you pee in the middle of the night, or stupid bird noises, which is ridiculous. So you want to try to have stuff, if you're going to have sound, have something that has little to no variance in it. But that does influences people's sleep quality. So if you don't like total silence, get some type of mindless, consistent sound. If you don't like sound, then make it as silent as possible. And using earplugs is a great way to help with that. Last thing we kind of cover is smells. So smells actually can help. So they have air diffusers that you can buy now that are relatively cheap, like 15-20 bucks. And you can get like oils, like essential oils or scented oils. And you can have like the smell of lavender kind of like around the room, and that does help things be more calming and soothing. And they make a bunch of other type of scents too. So I actually have a diffuser, and I don't use it like regularly, but whenever I do accidentally use it, or just kind of happen to use it, it is nice. So I'm not as disciplined sometimes to go fill up the water and put it in, but it is nice to have when it's there. And if I cared enough, I'd probably do it more often. But it's an option. So if you think of sleeping environment, there's temperature, there's lighting, there's sound, there's smell, and like we said, there, if you cover the skin, that helps as well. So those are some ideas. We also have sleep timing is a concern. You want to try to go to bed at the exact same time every night and try to wake up at the exact same time every day. That makes an enormous difference in sleep quality. That's one of the most impactful things I've ever experienced with sleep quality is trying to be consistent. The more consistent you are with sleep timing, going to bed at a certain time and waking up at a certain time, overwhelmingly your sleep quality will be better. So it does take some discipline and some commitment. So like I said, is now I use melatonin to help me fall asleep, and I know a bunch of clients who do that too, and friends. And that helps with kind of, okay, if I know the melatonin kicks in within about 30 to 60 minutes, I'll take that before, about 30 to 60 minutes before I want to be in bed and sleeping. So that kind of helps you kind of like ease off into sleep. But just getting into bed, like say your bedtime is 11, get into bed, have all your, like electronics off and just lay there. And you'll often find that you're going to fall asleep a hell of a lot faster than you thought you would. So you'll think, oh, I'm not tired, just let me watch another video or two. Then an hour to an hour and a half goes by, and you could have been sleeping, within 15 minutes if you would have kept the electronics out of it. So just lay down at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every day. Now, what can help you lay down and fall asleep, like we just said, is everything with your sleeping environment. The melatonin, the sleepy time tea, and your evening routine, making sure you eat not too close to bed, make sure you're off electronics, maybe doing like a low mind involvement activity, like reading a book with a low level light, listening to a podcast, something that's very low level stimulating and doesn't have any physical component to it. So I used to play mental games whenever I was trying to fall asleep. Is I would ask myself, and I got the questions off a source online, but I would ask myself questions, and like there are things to kind of spark thought. And then you would kind of think through that in as much detail as you could, and often before you knew it, you'd fall asleep and you'd be waking up in the middle of the night or the next morning. So there were questions such as, if you could, what would you change within the past 1 year of your life? And it isn't meant to be like super dramatic, like miserable things. It's meant to be stuff that's a little more like kind of like fun thought or deep in thought. So like for me, for business, I might say is like, okay, within the last year, what's your most favorite gym purchase? And then why are you happy with it? And that would make me think of like a machine or a piece of equipment I bought, and I'd think about who like it was able to help, like who got benefit from it. So that would kind of make me happy. So things like that. There's another question: if you had like $1 million but you couldn't spend it on yourself, what would you do with it? She might say like, for me, My dad has always wanted to kind of restore a Corvette, so I might help him do that. My mom would just like more money to go see my brother, travel and stuff like that. So I might give her money for that. Give my money for my brother to do whatever the hell he wants to do with it. He kind of is his own person, so I don't need to tell him what to do. I'm sure he budgets it and would find something to do with it. But just thinking of different activities and different things like that helps. So if we also like, there's one question I liked, which was, if you could impart 3 pieces of advice to other people, words of wisdom, what would they be? And that's kind of fun. So if you had to sum up everything you've learned in life and what you think, not necessarily the meaning of life is, but what you think would make a good life, what would make a purposeful life, what would make a happy life, what would make somebody's life easier, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give? And that's kind of a fun thing. You can kind of think back through your life, say, anytime I had more patience with people and I showed love, and I tried to listen more than I tried to, kind of yell or try to tell them my thoughts. Typically, the more you listen in life, the more you learn. So that's something like a piece of advice that I would have for somebody is to just listen and love into others. Like, don't be so damn mad and grumpy all the time. So it goes back to kind of like there's a phrase where everybody's dealing with their own shit. So you have to give people some forgiveness. So, but that's a cool question. So these are things like I've done before where I'll lay in bed in a good sleeping position and I'll just kind of think through those answers. And before you know it, you're asleep. So, and then there's conversation about like when is the best time to go to bed. This factors into a couple things, but in general, the earlier in the evening you can go to bed, the better. So as much before midnight as possible. So there's kind of myth about like if you get hours of sleep before midnight, they almost count as like more fulfilling than after midnight. I don't think the actual number of midnight means anything, but it's better to go to bed as soon as you can rather than dragging out your evening with mindless activity. So one of the reasons why people tend to stay up late is they don't feel like they've had any me time yet. So their whole day was hectic. They were kind of doing everything for everybody else, and they didn't really have time to themselves. So they'll say, I just want to take the evening for myself. That's not really the best idea because the energy that you have at the end of the day is usually pretty crap quality, and you don't want to do anything of any value. You just want to veg out in front of the TV or Netflix or Prime or Hulu or whatever the hell people listen to or watch these days. So you just want to veg out and do nothing actually productive or nothing meaningful. So it's better to go to bed and then take that hour or 2 hours that you typically veg out and do nothing in the nighttime. Take that time in the morning to do something more productive. Maybe go for a walk, maybe exercise, maybe do yoga, maybe read a book, maybe listen to a podcast. So maybe pick up an art project. I don't know, whatever it is. But you'll find that if you wake up and you have your me time at the beginning of the day, you'll have a better quality of me time, and you'll find that you have less panic, less anxiety, and you have a calmer mindset throughout the rest of the day. This is 100% true for myself and a lot of the other people I know who do morning activities and morning routines that are me time based, kind of like for themselves. They all swear by it. They all swear that it's one of the best things they've ever done for anxiety, one of the best things they've ever done for anger issues. It's one of the best things they've ever done for just enjoying the quality of life. Is waking up, having some time for yourself, taking care of your own, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational type needs, doing stuff for yourself to quote unquote fill your cup, so to speak. So that way, the rest of the day, if you have to pour your heart and soul, pour your efforts, pour your time into other people, there's more to pour from. So if you stay up late to have personal time, stop doing that. Go to bed, have your personal time in the morning. Now, sometimes people stay up late because they just have anxiety, they have stress, they have worries. They're almost dreading the next day. We have a podcast number 247 titled Daily Happiness Routine that talks about a way in which you can reframe your mental kind of mindset from the day that you had into the next day and actually help to alleviate or lessen some of the stress that you're having about tomorrow. So check out number 247 podcast if you have trouble going to bed due to anxiety or stress. So that can make a big, big difference. It's something that I do on a regular basis. I don't do it every single night because some nights I'm just kind of in my routine. I'm happy and I'm feeling fine. But I do the daily happiness routine several days of the week. And I find it super helpful. And it really just helps me have better appreciation towards life. So not even lessening anxiety, just having better appreciation and being more recognition and grateful for the blessings that I have and the good things that happen in my life. So that's something I find helpful. So the last thing we're going to talk about here is alarms. So in general, when you wake up in the morning, it's good to have, or I've found it better to have, and so have my clients who've tried it, it's better to have an actually like kind of enjoying sound rather than some horrible alarm to wake you up. So for example, on my phone, I can connect my alarm to Spotify. So I can actually start playing like a song playlist as my morning routine, and it wakes me up in a happier mood. So actually, sometimes I'll play Motown, sometimes I'll play like different types of oldies, sometimes I'll play some type of alternative type music or some kind of poppy I guess pop song. So upbeat pop song that's popular. But I'll usually put on something happy. So as I wake up to that sound, it just kind of gives you're still alert. It's still a noise that's waking you up. But it's not like that, oh, go screw yourself and slam your phone down. It's like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool song that got me up, gets me moving. And often I'll just let it keep playing while I get ready for in the morning. So that's something I find really helpful is having a more pleasant sound to wake you up. It leads into a more pleasant mood. So I typically also have like a drink and or some type of food ready for my breakfast, or like whatever the first thing I consume of the day is. So I'll wake up, I might start sipping on a drink. I have a good song playing. I'll kind of go into the bathroom, brush my teeth. After a song or two plays, I put on a podcast. So I just kind of start my day and it kind of rolls in from a good, healthy, happy start rather than like a loud, obnoxious noise that comes on that you want to slam and turn off really quick. Then all of a sudden it's back to silent, and then all of a sudden you're falling back asleep. So if you can find a sound that's pleasant, you can keep that sound playing, and it can actually help you stay awake rather than hitting the snooze button and falling back asleep. So another tip is for your alarm is to have whatever your alarm clock is, whether it's an actual alarm clock or your phone, but have it away from you, away from your bed. You can have it across the room. Some people have said they'll put it in the bathroom, really loud apparently, because somehow they can still hear it. But you want to have it a little bit of ways away from you, so that way you actually have to get out of bed to get to the sound, and that helps you get physically moving. So it's